got me again. Beats me every time. Well, hello everyone. 2020's been a pretty terrible year, but this year, Cinco de Mayo fell on Taco Tuesday. So I thought that we should talk about maybe some taco pairing, and none other than Grenache Blanc. So for the first 3 years of two vineyards, which is we're a decade old now, we didn't have a white wine. And when we decided to add one, I thought I really want to make something that is crisp and beautiful and also just very different. There was almost no Grenache Blanc on the marketplace in Washington State at that time. But none other than our good friend Dick Boucher planted this fruit, originally for Doug McCrae, McCrae Cellars. And right place, right time. I asked Dick if he had any Grenache Blanc to sell back then in 2010, and I kind of expected him to say no. But lo and behold, he had some to sell me, and we've been making it ever since. We're really proud of it. So Grenache Blanc, most people are familiar with Grenache, the red version. Grenache Blanc is related to the red version. They're essentially different clones of the same grape. They grow early on, the leaf structure and cluster size are all pretty much identical. However, in mid-October typically, the Grenache Noir starts to turn purple, and Grenache Blanc obviously does not. So the vast majority of the wine we're going to talk about today comes from Boucher Vineyard. This is our 2018 Grenache Blanc. Every year that we've made this, we've blended a little bit of Roussanne in just to kind of build the mid palate and give it a little structure. And Grenache Blanc is really beautiful on its own, but it's fairly acidic and it doesn't have any real roundness. So I wanted to introduce some of that. So this vintage, and our Roussanne actually comes from Olson Vineyards, which is also in the Yakima Valley. This year is 6% Roussanne. And this is primarily Boucher Vineyard Grenache Blanc, 81%. But this is the first year that we started sourcing from a new vineyard on the top of Red Mountain called Weather Eye. So this is 13% Weather Eye Vineyard Grenache Blanc, which has proven to be very different, as you might imagine. A much hotter area, but grown on the north slope of Red Mountain. Very different, beautiful new vineyard, very progressive. So we were honored to get that fruit as well. Grenache Blanc, the vast majority of the world's Grenache Blanc is grown in France, in the Rhone Valley primarily, and used by and large in blends, white wine blends. But we also can't talk about Grenache Blanc without talking about the motherland of Spain, where both Grenache and Grenache Blanc come from, and there they call it Garnacha and Garnacha Blanca. And a lot of my favorite examples do come from Spain. You can find some really lovely wines, and if you're out and about shopping and you find a Grenache Blanc from Spain, I entice you to pick it up. So yeah, nonetheless, this is vintage 9 for us of Grenache Blanc. We ferment this with native yeast, and we press it right away. So it goes directly to press. We press it into a tank. We let fermentation kick off in the tank naturally, and then we take that juice and we put it into barrels, and it finishes the fermentation in primarily neutral or old French oak barrels. A lot of times we do put like one new barrel in just to give it a little hint of oak tannin and aroma. But really want you to really taste the vineyard and taste the fruit here. So let's give this a whirl here. So again, Grenache Blanc usually very dry. There are some dessert wine styles, but primarily you're going to find this with no residual sugar, and that's certainly the case with ours. So typically get a lot of like pear and honeysuckle a little lemon rind. Really perfect for a spring or summer day. Just a really beautiful wine to have with a vast array of foods, especially here in the Northwest. It goes very well with seafood, but also great just with cheese and a green apple. Again, a lot of acid, just kind of wakes up the senses. Drink it with a slight chill on it, not too cold. I find that a lot of people choose to really get their wine super cold, and I think with a finer white wine, you lose a lot of nuances. It's cold and refreshing, yes, but you kind of lose a little of the aromatics. So I would only put this in the fridge for a couple hours, say, not just get it, freezing cold, but have just a little chill on it. So being Cinco de Mayo today, I wanted to try to redeem myself against my 10-year-old son, but he beats me every time. So got that wrestling match out of the way. It was a little embarrassing, but I wanted to see how this wine went with Mexican food, or really really American food. But I thought we would try this with Taco Bell. Doritos Locos Tacos. Now, I've never had one of these, but every time I see it, I think, man, a taco in a Dorito. So I thought, today's the day. It's Cinco de Mayo. I would say that these are probably pretty insulting to the Mexican culture. They make way better food than this. But nonetheless, thought, if you're watching this on the East Coast and you can get a bottle of my wine, you could easily find a Taco Bell, right? They're on every corner. So let's give this a whirl. And this is the Flamin' Hot Doritos Tacos Locos, I might add. These are the nacho cheese, but I'm gonna go for the Flamin' Hot here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just not very good, but pairs lovely with this wine, I have to say. On its own, a bit of a soggy lot of food here. It's not really that flaming hot, honestly. A lot of cheese and reconstituted beef, but the wine, though, is very lovely. I might add too that we're having a spring sale on the 2018 Grenache Blanc. Typically, this comes at you at $25. We are selling the end of vintage rather for just $18. So I'll put a link at the bottom to go to the website if you want to grab some of this. We have maybe 30 cases or so left. They're moving pretty fast, and when the vintage is gone, the deal's done. So hopefully you can get some hands on some of this. Love to get some Grenache Blanc in your life. I also want to give a serious shout out and a lot of praise to our Hispanic culture and all the work that they do in our agriculture. Washington wine would not exist without all the hard work that they do. So thank you. Tip my hat to all of you. And this mask is really hot. So I think without further ado, I'm going to let you go on about your Cinco de Mayo festivities. Get yourself some Grenache Blanc. Here's 2 vintners coming at you, and enjoy that Washington wine, y'all.